Welcome to The Shield Within. The issues discussed on the Shield Within podcast do not reflect the opinions of any specific agency. They are the views of the host and the guest. Any persons discussed may be fictional for comedic purposes only. This podcast is rated explicit and listener discretion is advised. Listening to The Shield Within may trigger repressed or suppressed memories or experiences. Please contact a mental health professional at your earliest convenience. It's time for the chaos to cease.
Time to open yourself to peace.
From the hours you've put in,
to the next shift you begin.
From the endless pursuit of release
that finds the worst unleashed.
Transform the ugly into a win.
Get to know your shield within.
Welcome to The Shield Within.
Hey.
Said that just as Nick took a drink.
You motherfucker. I feel like you did that intentionally.
It was organic, but still funny at the same time. So welcome to The Shield Within. You have an action-packed episode this time. We have myself, we have Roll Call Room Nick, and we're going to have the king of leadership himself, the man, himself. The legend, the myth, the author, the major, the driving instructor, the worldwide best trainer, the best, Mr. Dr. Travis Yates is going to be with us today. We're going to be talking about leadership and leadership in the modern times. Modern times being today, which is June the 13th, Thursday the 13th. We finally tracked him down and stalked the good doctor long enough till he finally relented. It's been a while since he's been on The Shield Within. It's been a long time since he's been on the Roll Call Room. But we're absolutely super excited, like I say, to have him on the show today. So let's do a little business real quick and we'll jump right in. Facebook, /The Shield Within. Go check us out there. Please give us a like, share our posts, www.shieldwithin.com. Also, Patreon. If you got that extra $5 laying around in your pocket every month, instead of letting the car thieves take it out and go spend it on drugs, you can give it to us. Patreon, /The Shield Within. We have one plan. Had some freeloaders out there signing up for free, which is cool. You know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Thanks for sharing and joining. But the $5 donations, and that goes right back into support of the show. Nick, anything for your end before we jump in?
No, buckle up.
Buckle up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Roll Call Room. With me is Marc the Cop, my co-host. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing great.
We are super pumped. We have Travis Yates on the show. Again, it's been I think we talked about 2+ years since you've been on. You were on the Roll Call Room when we were like in our infant stage and doing really dumb shit. So thank you for doing that.
Smartest thing you
thank you for coming back. Yeah. How you been, man? How's everything?
Man, everything's great. It's great to be back, guys. I'm glad to see you guys are doing well.
Yeah, you look great, man. It's been a while. So we're going to get right into it because there's so much to unpack when you're on the show, especially last time. We could have probably done 5 episodes just on that. I found Travis at probably a pivotal point in my life right when I left law enforcement or pushed out of law enforcement. And I read his book, Courageous Police Leader. I moved since, so it's in a box, and I was telling Mark I want to find this thing because it still has over 100 tabs in it from your last interview, because I read it cover to cover, and then I read it again, and it was almost like as I was reading it, you were reaffirming everything that was going on with me, everything, every ounce of poor leadership that I had experienced was in that book, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, I've heard that, Nick, from a lot of people. In fact, I had this FBI agent walk up to me in a seminar, and he basically grabbed me and said, "How do you know my boss?" And I said, "I don't even know you, dude. I don't even know who you are."
Yeah.
Because I read this book, and you wrote about my boss. And to me, that's just confirmation. You know, I actually wrote the book in 2019. It came out in 2019. I wrote it in 2017, 2018. But I wrote it in the auspices of what I was observing. And I thought to myself, man, if we don't change the way we lead, 2020 is going to happen. I didn't know about 2020, but that was sort of what I was trying to say in the book. Like, we better change this. And then, of course, 2020 happens, and everything I talked about came unfortunately true. And so we've got to double down on all the courageous things, so to speak.
Well, and the interesting part is I never in a million years would have thought about writing a book. Never. We joked about it before I hit record. New York City public education. I'm surprised I could put two words together. So I read your book, and it inspired me to turn around and sit there and go, let me start putting my thoughts down. And it started as a journal, and it turned into that. And the same experience, like when very rare that I'll do speaking engagements now, not like you're all over the place, man. I'll go and, people are like, I read your book. This is my chief. Like, this is what my chief did to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's affirmation, man. It makes you feel good that you're not just throwing this into the dark hole and it's not going anywhere. So kudos to you, man.
Yeah, I'm honored, Nick. Thank you. And what a great effort on your part, man. What a great contribution to the profession. So I'm very, very grateful you said that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to get right into it, which is Mark and I, we had a discussion earlier today, which we were recording it because it's very rare that him and I go back and forth with each other and disagree. And I wouldn't even say this is a disagreement. It's more of like an aspect of disagreement. Like, do you feel, and you're in tune with it a lot more than Mark and I, we're out of it. I'm not on the seminar circuit. I don't work with law enforcement as much with the company that I work for. Are you seeing the tides changing? Are you seeing us coming around the bend from the 2020 era in law enforcement? And it's a heavy question because it's not about law enforcement in general. It's about the leadership that's steering law enforcement. Do you see it changing?
Well, you got to be careful when you answer the question because I hear cops say this, I hear leaders say this. They will talk about this pendulum swinging back and forth, and that gives the auspice that we can do nothing and it will just magically swing back. Which I would say, if the pendulum breaks, it never swings back. The pendulum broke in 2020, and in many parts of the country, it will remain broke. Portland, Seattle, New Orleans, all these cities, right? I mean, there is a way to come back. I actually have an interview coming out with Alpha News later today where they asked me this intriguing question: is there any hope for Minneapolis? And we'll get into that a little later today. There's always hope, and the hope is because everything bad that we can all talk about, not just in law enforcement, but the entire world, everything bad that we see, we observe, we see the effects of, is because of leadership, bad leadership, which means good leadership can change it. And so we are seeing pockets in the country that kind of have realized the errors of their ways, so to speak. And I'm starting to see them putting people in places, chiefs, deputy chiefs, things like that sort of have a leadership standpoint they need to have. But there are also parts of the country to where they're just doubling down on ridiculous and stupid. I mean, we can all sort of know what parts of those countries those are, but police departments have become political, and every time you politicize something, it destroys it. Right? Look at the vaccine. That's a medical issue. That's not a political issue, but they turn it into a political issue, and it's a disaster. Right? Mm-hmm. In fact, now they're saying, "Oh yeah, all you people we censored. Yeah, it never really was a vaccine. mRNA doesn't stop anything. It just lessens the symptoms." And they start shaking their head and bobbing their head. And so, whenever you politicize something, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to overcome that. So we have to depoliticize law enforcement. So I'm hoping there are parts of the country that realize that, hey, when we politicize law enforcement, everything suffered, particularly the community, because that's who suffers. We can talk about what happens to law enforcement officers. We all know that too well, but people don't want to talk about the victims of crime and the communities that we're supposed to be serving. That's what really gets in the way and the wedge that drives between law enforcement and the community. So I'm definitely seeing more people having that aha moment in the seminars. I mean, I started the seminars 10 years ago, and people thought I was insane, what I was saying. Now they all agree with me, right? And so there is more of an awareness now, but unfortunately it took us going to the pits of hell for people to realize what I was saying was correct. Yeah. And so I am seeing that changing in some parts of the country. And of course, other parts of the country, I'm seeing just plain foolishness. And it's almost like they're brainwashed because you see the results. If you want to see if leadership's good, look at the results, right? And in law enforcement, it's pretty easy. Our mission is in our name, law enforcement, right? So if you're in a community where crime keeps spiking, then there's something wrong there because our mission is to reduce crime, make safer communities. And so people that understand that should know whether leadership is good or bad.
Yeah. And so where my thought process is what I still see is, and again, people thought I was crazy when I was talking about that like 2 years ago also, which was police chiefs, the way in which that they're getting positions they're being passed around like a peace pipe. An opening happens, municipalities are looking at their resume. They're looking at, they were a police chief in Chicago for 5 years. They were in Florida for 4 years. They're not looking at the decimated departments that they left behind. They're strictly looking at that this person was a chief for 10 plus years or 15 plus years. And then they come into an agency and they just destroy that agency. They destroy morale. People leave in record numbers. They can't recruit fast enough, which we'll get into recruitment later. Which is a disaster for a lot of these agencies. The way that they're trying to get people is a disaster. I still see where police chiefs are coming into positions, and there's one in particular, I won't say his name because I don't want to get in trouble again. He gets passed around. He's been LAPD. He's been in Texas. He's been in Miami. He's been in Colorado. Everywhere you turn, this guy, and he's all over the news, but he gets picked up all of the freaking time.
Yeah, Art Acevedo is a great guy.
You said it, not me. You're not the one that got the cease and desist, but you know what? You say it, buddy.
I said he was a great guy. Don't get me wrong here. Now listen, you are 100% correct. And it comes down to this. When you're selecting the chief, are you selecting, because you have different styles of chiefs, right? You have the chiefs that sort of go, hey, if I agree with everything the DOJ says and I sign all the IACP pledges, I get my yellow brick and I build my resume with all this technology, which by the way, isn't in our mission, but anyway, and I get all these nice glowing things, I'm going to be able to get certain jobs, right? And there's plenty of cities that want that. Then you have other chiefs that just want to lead, right? And when you lead and you take care of people and you give other people credit, you empower people, you're not getting all the credit. You're not building the resume. Those are actually the chiefs that need to be getting those jobs. But we have politicians and community activists or whoever else is involved in the selection process that aren't looking at actual leadership. It'd actually be pretty easy to pick a chief. You just basically evaluate the place they just left. Mm-hmm. That's what the private industry does, right? Yep. I mean, the guy that founded MoviePass, good luck going. Not the guy that founded it, the guy that came in after the guy that founded it and destroyed it. That guy's probably going to have to build his own business, right? Because probably not a lot of big companies are going to hire the guy based on the effectiveness, and he has a huge resume, but based on what he did. And so we've got to understand most departments. I say most, so it could be 51% or it could be 99%. They're not looking at leadership when they're picking these chiefs. That's what we have to get back to doing is look at real leaders. And when you look at real leaders, rank's got very little to do with it. My resume's got very little to do with it. It is your effectiveness and what you have done, because a real leader will make change positively almost immediately wherever they go. Right. You find a lot of those true leaders kind of just stay put because they're invested in the community. They don't have these aspirations to go from city to city to city. Right. And so you sort of have these pirates that go around to all these cities jumping around. They either get fired or get run out of town or whatever it is. And there's always a city for them to go to because those cities don't understand the difference between what a leader is and what somebody on paper is.
Yeah, that's an incredible way of looking at it. And you touched on my favorite organization. I think they're doing a fucking phenomenal job leading law enforcement, which is the IACP. Any place that can bring in $64 million a year, and has nothing to show with it. To me, every time there's an open law enforcement position here in like Virginia, DC, Maryland area, it always seems that they flock to the IACP to run their chief selection process. And anytime I see the IACP posting for a chief job on LinkedIn or somewhere else, I literally, my skin crawls because exactly what you said is going to be the criteria. It's not a leader. It's as a city manager, how can I control this person politically? How can I influence them to be the police chief, but also just carry out what I want you to do? So your feelings?
Yeah, the ICP is a perfect example of politics, right? They get the vast majority of their money from the Department of Justice. So they're going to align everything with the Department of Justice says. Department of Justice destroys communities. They destroy law enforcement. In fact, Gupta, before she left in January, said her goal was to reimagine police. She just didn't tell us how. Well, we can look around. We know how they want to reimagine police, because they do run a significant number of departments in this country with consent decrees. And the last I checked, the majority of the top 20 most violent cities in this country are ran by the Department of Justice under consent decrees. So that's how they want to reimagine it. So when this organization is getting millions and millions of dollars from that entity, they're going to align with it. And then, I'll give you an example of how that may affect even a chief that doesn't want to subscribe to this. I'll give you a quick example. So before George Floyd died, LVNR, lateral vascular neck restraint. I think I'm supposed to say vascular neck restraint because LVNR is actually trademarked out of Kansas City, but that's not a deadly force option. Never has been, never will be. It's never killed anybody. Everybody watches on the weekends at UFC. Everybody's got a big brother knows that doesn't kill you. Every redneck as I speak are doing it to each other. I mean, everybody knows that has a brain. Okay. Right. So in the model policy of the ICP, and ICP does have an opportunity to do some good. There's lots of departments that, they can't afford Lexapro or they can't afford policy writers, so they could put these model policies out. Well, the model use of force policy for years never addressed vascular neck restraint, nor should it, because it's, that should be from department to decide, because it does involve training on an annual basis. And it never addressed it. Well, after George Floyd did not die from a vascular neck restraint, he did not die from a chokehold, he did not die from any marks or bruises on his body. Don't believe me, read the autopsy. The truth hurts some people. The ICP went in and placed that in their policy as deadly force only. Well, the problem with that is it's not deadly force. It never has been deadly force. And the DOJ now uses that citation in their consent decrees to destroy departments' policies. Then there is intermediate force, which is where it should be. That's just one small example. And I talked to a mid-level chief out of Missouri, because he's a good chief, he's a good leader, and he changed his policy. And I went off on him on a podcast, and he called me afterwards. He says, Travis, you don't understand. I fought the city manager. I fought the activist. I tried to explain to them, but when it's in the IACP model policy, I don't have a lot of room to argue, because that is known nationwide as our kind of organization that we're supposed to subscribe to. So the ICP is hurting law enforcement nationwide. They're not helping them. Yes. I mean, making people, I don't want to think a day goes by where people don't sign up on another ICP pledge that we're going to do this or some fancy name. They have an opportunity to do so much good. And they don't. Politics are so interjected inside. In fact, the individual members aren't the issue. Probably some of the leaders aren't the issue, but collectively as organizations, they're so tied to politics. And you could talk about that with other police organizations as well. That they really struggle to actually help out the officers. I would challenge anybody that doesn't believe me to go to a line level officer doing their job and say, how's the ICP helped you? With that kind of money, they should be able to help every line duty officer in this country. And I don't think you're going to find any line level officers that says they even know what the ICP does.
Exactly. Well, and it's just interesting because I don't know what bug got up my ass one day and I pulled their tax returns. And those two episodes that we did, I think you commented on Twitter, X, whatever the fuck they're calling it today. And it was a breath of fresh air because we haven't talked in a while. And you were like, here we go, like this. And you were just as excited when I pulled these tax returns and I started reading.
Isn't it? Completely sickening.
I didn't know. Like when I pulled those tax returns, I screenshotted it and sent it to Mark and I go, holy shit.
Yeah.
And he goes, what's up? And I sent it to him and he goes, did you look at them? I go, I'm studying them. And the more you go down their tax return and you see how much money they're pulling in, and as professional development for themselves, the trainers within a IACP, they're only spending $58,000 a year training themselves, professional development for themselves. What does that tell you? And I agree with you, which is, first of all, they never answered or gave a comment. We reached out to them and then said, hey, we pulled your tax returns. We're doing these episodes. Crickets. Then all of a sudden, then they start a mental health program finally.
Yeah, you got to do a pledge, right? Build a pledge.
Yeah. And it was,
The problem with the ICP, and I can even go to the National Law Enforcement Memorial, which I revere, but I pulled their tax returns one day and got sick to my stomach because I saw what the board members are making that I've never heard of that aren't in law enforcement. it's hard to discuss them in a negative light because most people are their heads in the sand. They don't know any of this, and the PR teams that keep these organizations looking glorious, right? And so it's very difficult to express truth to people because they don't want to believe it. Right. I mean, I could tell you all day long that masks don't work. The science backs me, but half this country is going to call me completely crazy when I say that, because I'm just the crazy guy that went to PubMed and did the research when they were trying to make us wear 2, 3, 4 masks. And I go, this makes no sense. I've been through 50 flu seasons, never been told to wear a mask before. And sure enough, and even my doctor buddies were just laughing, going, yeah, they don't work. I said, well, why are you defending this? Well, they're part of it. That part of this, whatever craziness is going on when politics is involved. So it's very difficult. There's such a big behemoth in the industry, kind of like Taser. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but do you know that the new Taser is actually considered a weapon by the ATF? I don't know how much you know about this, but it's something to talk about. I believe I don't want to. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to pause and say that this is my opinion that it's the Taser 10, but I'm not a Taser instructor, so it could be a different Taser number. I think it's the most, their big campaign to reduce deadly force by so much, right? And this new Taser designed to do that is actually classified as a firearm. Now, here's the problem with that. No one knows that's getting these tasers. And what do you think the activists are going to do when we raise our taser deployments up and they're considered deadly force options now, or considered a projectile as a firearm? And Jesse Watts, sheriff of Eureka County, he'd be great to have on. He actually exposed this on a live call with their CEO of one of their stock share meetings. And he didn't even know. Yeah. So all these folks are doing this. And so that's obviously a problem because there's such a big behemoth. You can't talk bad about Taser, right? But that's not a great thing for us, that the device they're giving you to reduce shootings with a gun is also classified as a gun. That's not something I think is a good option, because that will be used against us like everything else is used against us. And so no one seems to be looking ahead for this. So it all comes down to what I said earlier. Politics interject themselves in these large organizations, and money drives that. And some of the best work being done for law enforcement is done by organizations you probably never heard of, right? Or individuals that maybe you've never heard of. They're trying to do the right thing. What if these large organizations that have the resources would just get in their head, let's just try to do the right thing? It'd be amazing stuff. And I think I've kind of given up on relying on them, but that would be pretty amazing if we could get them to do that.
Yeah. And the tax return thing was an eye opener. I think when we started the roll call room, we were attached to one organization, which we won't talk about. And you had reached out to me and were like, be careful. And man, it was like right after IACP's tax return, we pulled theirs, and I sent it to Marc, because he came on like later on from my original co-host. Sorry, Marc.
That's all right. I'm just
I just kill co-hosts apparently.
Yeah, they're all dead, but Marc now. Right?
Yeah. I'm a mic killer. So like I copied that one and I sent it to Marc, and I was like, this is the reason why I don't associate with them anymore, is because the money. You follow the money. It's always follow the money. To go back to IACP, and not to pick on them, but I will. You're spot on, because what happens is the IACP basically ordains everything. When the DOJ wants to do something, they reach out to the IACP and they say, hey, we need you to say that this is okay. And because they're getting that 10 million plus a year, they're a slave to it. They're just an extension of the DOJ. And you look at their board members and stuff, like the CEO of IACP, $870,000 a year. Yeah. Don't know what why he's getting paid that. But anyway, it's stuff like that kind of is irritating. So I pose a separate question to you, which is this: in an optimal world, you're the city manager or some sort of municipality that's chief just left. You're the city manager. What's the hiring process in which you would go down to look for a chief of police?
So let's just say I've got some candidates coming in, right? Let's say I've got 5 or 6 candidates coming in. I ask them one question. Give me the names of the officers that worked for you at your last department, and give me their spouses' names.
You'd eliminate a lot right there.
You know why I'm asking the question? I'm asking the question because I want to make sure they care.
Yeah.
Because if you don't care, you're not a leader. Yeah. And you're right. That would eliminate a lot of people. I'm being kind of funny here, but not really. I mean, obviously I'm going to ask other questions, but I'm leading with that. I want to know who worked for you. I want to know who their spouses are. I want to know what their likes and dislikes are. What are their hobbies? How did you use them? How did you mold their hobbies and their likes within the job? Because when you can do that, you're a powerful organization. When you take something that people like to do away from the job and you embed it on the job, you never get rid of that employee. They love that job when you can do that. We do the opposite in law enforcement, right? We put our buddies in a position that has nothing to do with the background. And if you're really good at something, let's say Marc's good at driver training, we make sure Marc doesn't do driver training, right? That's what we do in law enforcement, unfortunately. And then we wonder why there's a retention problem or a recruiting problem, so to speak. So yeah, I want to make sure they care. And then obviously I would go talk to people. I wouldn't talk to their fellow chiefs or their fellow lieutenants. I'm talking to the line officers. Yeah. Right. And I want to say, how often did you see the chief? And then what type of interaction did you have with him? Do you feel like you've been treated fairly? I'm not sure anybody's going to do that or take that advice, but if you want truly a good leader, you start with that question.
Yeah. So as a profession right now across the board, how do you think we're doing? And I say we, like I'm still in it. My heart's still in it. Marc's heart's still in it, even though it's made of stone. How are we doing with recruitment as a profession? And I know that's a very loaded question because we have, and I'll turn it over to you for an answer, but the generic thing is we have a high speed, low drag recruitment video for every agency. It starts out with the SWAT guys with shirts 3 sizes too small, a fucking crazy German Shepherd or Malamar biting somebody, and the nicest looking people in the department, with their hair done. And that's not the case in real reality. Usually it's snaggletooth on midnight, Those are usually the recruitment videos. They're never videos of you like in your car eating Chinese food at 3:00 under the red light. It's never you in the back with.
You got to eat the Chinese food behind the building. You can't be seen.
That's just, or you like with Clorox wipes cleaning up some bum's shit in the back of your car. It's none of those, man. It's none of those.
Right.
But I digress. I kid, but how are we doing with recruitment after that 2020 kind of wave? Are we adapting to it, or are we just placating to what we think the community wants? And your thoughts of how we do a better job.
Well, I'm not just going to give you my opinion. I think we're failing on every angle. But I want to tell you what, back to the ICP, they do some research that can be helpful. They just recently came out with a report that said 75% of the police departments are using external help for recruiting, and 65% can't get enough people. So that should be a clue that whatever they're doing externally isn't working, but they don't be catching that clue. When you start off with a faulty premise in recruiting, you're never going to get to the solution. So let me back this up about 10 years. I was actually over recruiting unit as a commander. As most commanders in units, you don't know a lot about those units, right? You get thrust in these positions. Recruiting was just one of the things I was responsible for, but I didn't know a lot about it at the time. Some recruiters came by and said, "Hey, we're going to the University of Arkansas to a job fair," and that's where I went to school. Go Hogs, who get killed in the SEC, and I said, "Yeah, I'll go with you." So we spent the day. It took 3 or 4 people, a couple of cars. Probably $4,000 or $5,000 in registration and salaries and you name it. And I get down there and I think we saw 3 people all day. And it was empty. It was empty because unbeknownst to us, there's this thing called the internet that's out there. And so I get back, I think about this overnight thinking something's not right. I mean, I didn't know anything about recruiting, but I knew that wasn't recruiting. And I asked them the next day, I said, "Hey, you saw 3 people. Did you get their contact information? Did you get any leads?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, we just told them who we are." And I started seeing the decline in recruiting. But here's where the premise is. We blame 2020 for the recruiting crisis. And when you put that blame elsewhere, you never blame yourself. Right. The truth is, up until probably 10 years ago, I saw this decline 10 years ago. We didn't ever have to recruit. We had what we called recruiters, but guys, here's who they still are today. They're people that sit back and take applications and they walk you through the hiring process. Right. That's not recruiters.
They're guys. Okay? They're not recruiters.
I'm not diminishing the effort that goes out at job fairs or silly bus ads or whatever, but none of that's recruiting. You don't see private industry going to job fairs, right? That's where recruiting really happens. And by the way, in the private industry, people inside that organization don't do the recruiting. They hire experts to do the recruiting. It's a very expertise skill. So what happened about 10 years ago moving forward was in 1994, our now President Biden signed with Bill Clinton. He was the second signer on the 1994 crime bill. In that crime bill, put 100,000 cops on the street. I came on in 93. I saw this happening because we said, oh, yeah, we'll make them school resource officers. We all threw them on the streets to fight bad guys, right? That's why crime was reduced so much in the 90s. Right. Well, guess what's happening in 25, 30 years? We're actually just hit the 30th year of that. Guess what's happening in the last 10 years with those 100,000 cops? They're all leaving. Okay. So the back end's leaving quicker. You combine 2020, the back end's leaving even quicker. And there's just a different generation now. Like when I went into law enforcement, I didn't have to be recruited. I mean, I put in applications and I sat by the phone for 6 months. Nobody contacted me. Nobody kept me informed. I just waited for the phone to call. And I knew once I got that job, I would stay there 20, 25, 30 years. Today, in every industry, that's not what's happening. So we have not adapted to the officers we've lost from the 94 crime bill, to the officers we've lost even more of the way we treat them, and to the fact that we now have to actually recruit. I call it the 80-20 rule today. Back in the day, guys, 20 years ago, you had 400% of applicants. You could just sit back and do nothing. Yeah. And you get more applicants than you ever needed. There are stories of people on the job that had to apply over 4 or 5 years just to get a job. Yes. We all know those stories. Oh yeah. So it's very competitive. In fact, I went to college and 1991, 1992, and my counselor goes, "Hey, you need to get a minor in Spanish." And I go, I don't want to do that. And they said, "Well, you're never going to get hired in law enforcement. You've got to do something to stand out." That's how competitive it is. And so I cheated my way through that minor in Spanish, or I can't speak a lick of it, but it certainly, but my point is, we said we were recruiting even back then. We weren't recruiting. We maybe looked like we did. We thought that made a difference. It didn't make a difference, right? And so what we're doing now is, I call it the 80-20 rule now. So we still, thank goodness, have about, if it's a normal department, you're going to get about 80% of your department filled just because. Just like we always, but it's not 400% anymore, right? It's 80%. So the other 20%, which is why on average, I'm seeing about a 15 to 30% reduction in staffing across the country. Even the good departments, they're down, right? It's ranging 15 to 20. I think I saw Virginia Beach the other day. They're 15, 16%, pretty good department. Anyway, everyone's down. There are a few that aren't, but for the most part, everyone's down. Well, the problem is, okay, now that this has happened, you have a choice. You can keep doing what you did for the last 30 years, which is say you have recruiters, but not really recruit, wait for applications. And that didn't work. So then they said, what's the next best thing? Man, these marketing companies pop up, right, in 2020, 2021, and they're charging like $19.90 prices for websites and videos. I mean, I'll spend $250,000 to get a website and a video. Now, what is law enforcement bad about, guys? We see a problem, we throw money at it, the problem gets fixed. Think about it. You need a new car, you need a new computer, you need a real-time crime center. They throw a ton of money at it, and then the problem's fixed. That can't occur in recruiting because it's a philosophy shift, right? Nobody ever went to work for a department because they saw a video. Nobody ever went to work for a department because they saw a website. The problem is we have these chiefs that get enamored by this. It's a shiny object. Oh, man, that website's cool. They send it to all their friends. All the department likes it. But recruiting is, what are the people you're trying to attract? What do they like? And they could care less, man. These kids are on TikTok watching a lot better videos than the video you're putting out. Yep. We still to this day are seeing departments spending crazy money on a product that was never designed to recruit. That's marketing. Marketing's not recruiting. And folks, the research is clear. It takes 7 to 21 touch points in marketing. Nick, you know this, for anyone to make a decision. Well, this decision is not to buy a pencil. This decision is to get a job. And so that tool is not going to work, but we still see by and large departments using marketing. I want to dive into this because this is so important, folks. If we don't fix recruiting, it's over. Like, it's done. One or two things are going to happen. We're just going to go, well, it's just the way it is. We don't have enough officers, or we're going to hire people that we shouldn't be hiring. Right. And we're already seeing that. You're already seeing sheriff's departments taking up beats in municipalities because the cities have just given up. Well, it can be solved if you just recruit. And so I got involved with Safeguard Recruiting, founded by law enforcement, because for the first time I saw somebody actually doing it right. These guys learned these tools in the trucking industry. They retired from law enforcement, went over to the trucking industry, which, by the way, they don't have websites, they don't have social media. Trucking industry has 100% turnover. Unless you drive for Amazon or Walmart with benefits, these guys are always jumping from truck to truck. Right. And they actually learned how to recruit, and they're just killing it. And they learned all these techniques, right? And so it's pretty detailed, but here's what they do. It's simple. They literally can and I've seen this real time. I'll give you one example. Philadelphia, big department, big problems. They're down 1,200. They'll be down 2,000 by the end of this year. They spent $3 million a year or two ago on a big marketing campaign. That's going to solve the problem, right? No, I already said it's not going to ever solve the problem. Their recruiting got worse.
Oh, wow.
Now, when that happens, I've seen this too. The person that championed that is never going to go to the chief and go, it's failing, because they championed it. Right. But what happened in Philly is they got a new commander that looked around and said, hold on here. We spent all this money and it's gotten worse. I want to try to fix this. That's a leader right there, by the way. They want to try to solve the problem. He somehow finds some stuff I'd written on it. Marketing versus recruiting, big difference. Marketing's not going to work. Recruiting works. And he signed up with Safeguard. In the first 4 weeks, they were sent 1,500 people.
Wow. That's impressive.
Okay? Another agency up your way, guys, up in Virginia, I won't name the name, but after the first month, they got turned on to Safeguard. They had tried it all. The commander was emotional with me on the phone. He had literally thought that this was over, that their department was not going to be sustainable. After the first month, he's almost crying to me on the phone saying he hadn't seen this many applicants in 4 years.
Wow.
And that is just because they took a philosophy shift. We're going to actually recruit and not just market, right? Because look I was in Phoenix a few months ago. I saw all these billboards. I mean, crazy money what billboards cost. And of course, the billboard companies say, 3 million people drive by your billboard. Well, think of it from a recruiting aspect. People are just going to drive by and look at their billboard and just jump on their phone and start. No, none of that's happening. No. But it's an easy solution to a complicated problem. Well, Safeguard, what I love about it is they take this, they let the recruiters do what they've always done, wait for applications. So they basically go out and they find a ton of, because here's something people don't also understand. Everybody complains about applicants. It's not about the applicants. It's about how many people do you have to talk to get applicants. And so what Safeguard does is they'll find out how many openings you have, and they do the math on it, because they have every campaign, they've run over 300 campaigns. So they have all this data. And they go, okay, you got 100 openings. You're going to need to talk to 4,000 people to get 100, to get your 100 openings filled, because they know out of the 4,000 people they talk to, only 1,500 is going to apply.
Right.
They know out of the 1,500 is going to apply, only 750 is going to take the test. They know out of 7, they have all the data, and they can give you an exact quote to what it's going to cost to fill your department up, and that quote is almost always much less than the hiring bonuses they're paying out. Right.
Yeah.
The other thing you're seeing, which is pretty destructive, is departments think that bonuses are going to fix this, and laterals and that just puts a Band-Aid on it. It's not going to fix any of it. So I'm very optimistic, because I have actually seen with my own eyes what it takes, and it works. The problem is, we get back to leadership, they're not making the correct decisions. I think they're doing the best they can, right? But just because the shiny object looks cool to you means nothing on the recruiting side. And I go back to that original example. When we hire chiefs, we don't put up recruiting videos and websites. We hire recruiters. So Safeguard is the only one out there actually recruiting, because quite frankly, the profit on marketing is tremendous. I mean, we're talking multi-million-dollar contracts are being given to marketing companies who really don't have an interest to solve the problem, because if you don't solve the problem, you keep getting hired over and over and over again. And they promise website, because I saw this at my own department. We were paying pretty big money with a marketing company, and they'd come to staff meeting and go, we got 2,000 more web hits on the website, 2,000 more people hit our website. Of course, I'm like, what does that matter?
What does that transfer to, though?
And they couldn't answer the question, Nick. They couldn't answer the question. The beauty of the recruiting company is they can track that person all the way through the process, and they can tell you exactly where they came from, where they clicked on the ad, where they went through the pipeline, everything else. But marketer companies, they keep winning because they use website hits as a success, where recruiting companies use people as a success.
Yeah. And
Safeguard gets it. Go to safeguardrecruiting.com, reach out to me. I work with these guys almost every day because I believe in them. I do a lot of the training for them. And we've been doing seminars across the country, and I've got recruiters in there that, they're trying the best they can, but they're just doing what the other person did before them, who did what the other person did before them. There's no basic certification class to be a recruiter. Like, we're cops. We don't know this. And people get degrees and certifications to do recruiting. And so we're putting cops in these positions. That's a very technical position. And so here's what I like about this. This is solvable. People, I was asked in an interview this, is Minneapolis solvable? Yeah, but they're not going to solve the recruiting by spending $1 million on a marketing campaign with the tagline, imagine. Can you, who in their right mind wouldn't think that would be an internet troll forever? You used to see the comments on the internet when they put that ad out there. Imagine going to prison for doing your job. Imagine this, imagine that. That we're making these decisions that we really don't know what we're making. And I just need, and I say this wholeheartedly, because I care about this profession. If we don't fix recruiting, we're in deep trouble. It's Disneyland today compared to what it's going to be in the future. Yeah. I just need everybody to examine their efforts and to make sure they're actually recruiting. And if you have any questions on that, they need to reach out to me. Yeah. I won't ask for any money. I'll just explain to them what recruiting actually is. And if they're not capable of doing it, there's a company you want to go, how expensive is it? It's way cheaper than any marketing campaign you ever heard of. I would tell you what Philadelphia spent for 1,500 people, and you would laugh. You would laugh how cheap it actually is when it's done correctly. So I'm very positive about it because I know it can be solved, but there are days I'm frustrated because I'm like, why am I seeing another contract that's asking for videos and websites when that's not going to fix you?
Yeah, because the mindset needs to change because, and I've said this, Mark has said this on the show, and I've said it on the show, which is law enforcement has an identity crisis. And that's the other issue is they don't know who to placate to. They don't know whether or not to placate to the TikTok generation for recruitment, the Facebook generation, which is dying. And when I say dying, Facebook in general, like that, the hits on Facebook are going down. So they just don't know what to do. And to touch on your recruiter thing, Mark says this all the time. And I'm just talking for him this whole entire episode. So
I feel like Silent Bob over here.
Yeah, I know. Just shh. Mark always says the best recruiter is the one humping a patrol car because they're the ones that are going to turn around and say, this is the greatest job in the world. You'll never have a job like this. Come join us. And that's not happening, man. That's not like your number one. Yeah. Your number one recruiter, like the show Cops. Shit, it recruited me. The first episode I ever watched, I was like, that's what I want to. I was fucking 8 years old. I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. You don't see those on TV very much anymore. You don't have people banging, patrol cars out there saying that this is the greatest job. Those are the points that I wanted to make, but I wanted to pose another question to you, which is this. Are we, as law enforcement, are we a 20 to 25 year career anymore? Are we a career where we need to readjust what the longevity of an officer looks like? Should we entertain a 15-year career, a 15 and out? Because this newer generation, and trust me, I'm going to turn it over to you for an answer. The newer generation, that millennial generation and some of X, they're not committed anymore to a 25 to 30-year career anymore. These are very, very, I don't want to say undedicated generation, but they are not a longevity generation. So is it possible in the future where we may have to pivot and readjust? Is this still a 25-year career?
Well, I want to back up in a minute and give your audience one quick tip. There's a reason why in the military, every single branch of our military is not hitting their recruiting numbers. They're offering bonuses. They're doing everything they can. They're spending crazy money on recruiting. There's only one branch that's hitting their recruiting numbers. It's the U.S. Marine Corps. The U.S. Marine Corps does not offer a bonus. They asked the head of the Marines in a congressional hearing, they says, how is it that you're able to hit your recruiting numbers? You're not offering bonuses. You're not doing any incentives whatsoever. And he says, because they can become a U.S. Marine. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lesson to be learned when law enforcement got away from their mission. The people that want to be law enforcement want to be law enforcement. Yeah. And as our leaders took us away from our mission, doing everything but that, the people that would normally be interested in that profession are not being attracted to that profession. So I think leadership plays a factor. And to your second question, Nick, first off, I do think that sometimes a retirement system hurts us mentally and physically. I understand why we've put benefit. You know, when I came on, people were 20 and out. That's the way the system worked, 20 and out, 20 and out. And because I guess states or cities or communities decided, hey, it's cheaper just to keep an employee here than to hire new people and keep our our expertise here. They started putting all of these benefits, where you would stay. I mean, our max pension agency is 35 years, right? Where when I came on just 30 years ago, they would leave at 20. Well, there are people that can navigate a 35-year career in law enforcement and still be sane at the end of it, but many people can't. And so I think the longer you go down that road, the more dangerous it is. There's a reason why our life expectancy is shorter. There's a reason why we all know the epidemics and the suicide rates and the alcohol rates and divorce rates. We all know this stuff. We are almost incentivizing people becoming more destructive to their own health and wellness by doing that. And so your original question is 20 or 25 years still viable? It is, but we have to realize we're not dealing with a generation like we did in years past. I know every generation talks about this, but they're not going to change to us. We have to change to them. And what this new generation needs is they need challenges. They want to be part of the organization. The old military organization that we came on, guys, were, hey, for the first 5 years, shut up. We don't want to hear from you. Oh, maybe with 8 years, you can be an FTO. Maybe at 10 years, you could test for sergeant. But before that, just shut up, do your job. You're losing those kids before 10 years. Jobs are tryouts for kids today. It ain't nothing for them to come on 3 or 4 years to go, I'll go try something else, right? Where we would never think that. So what we should be doing on our end is finding out what drives them. And they are driven predominantly by free time, flexibility. They're driven by they want to be involved. I pulled in 2 kids their first year to help with an annual report a few years ago, and you would have thought I was an alien. They're like, we really get to do this? Like they couldn't even believe it. They did a heck of a job. I pulled them in because that's what they did in college. I don't care how many years you've been on the department. That's your skills. That's your expertise. I mentioned it earlier. We have to find out what drives these kids. And by the way, it's not what drove us, guys. We would have worked 24/7 for free. That's not what drives kids today. Find out what drives them. Oh, you love video editing. Hey, let's get you involved in this department doing some of that. Hey, you love this, or you love that, or you love sports. Let's get you involved in our athletic league. We have got to know who these people are. That's why I told you that question earlier of what a good leader is. Who's your people? Who are they? Let's say you got a department of 100 people. The first month, that chief should never leave his office. When he's new chief, he should pull every single officer in that office and ask them a series of questions of who they are, who their family is, what's their likes, dislikes, who can he pray for, what do you like to do, what do you want to do here? Find out who they are and plug them into that department in that aspect, and you will retain that generation. But doing it the way we used to do it, good luck with that.
It's not
good
working.
luck with that.
Yeah. Mark, I'm going to finally turn it over to you. I've actually asked all the good questions, so you're left with Snickers versus Twix.
Right. Left or right Twix is the big question. So I really want to just totally derail what we were just talking about, because I was watching the news yesterday, and I want to talk about Phoenix, Arizona.
Consent decrees.
Yes. Well, I'm throwing the grenade in.
Before you answer that, what is the best way to get off of a consent decree? Because I know what your answer is going to be.
I think I know.
Yeah.
Never get on one.
I've heard this from big city chiefs all over the country. I'm doing this to avoid a consent decree. I'm doing this to avoid DOJ scrutiny. Once again, if you start from a faulty premise, you're never going to get to a great solution.
Right.
The Department of Justice or the federal government has no right to be in a local jurisdiction. It's called the 10th Amendment. I know we are kind of Constitution stupid these days. If you read the 10th Amendment, there is no right of the federal government to be involved in anything in a local government, including law enforcement. The only reason consent decrees exist, and if people don't know what they are, it's what the Department of Justice calls their reform mechanism for local law enforcement. Now, first off, it's kind of hilarious that the DOJ thinks they can reform anybody, because they've never reformed the ATF or the FBI I saw a video just a week ago where these ATF guys in Arkansas crazy stuff that goes on. We all know the stories, right? So they pick and choose these cities based on politics predominantly. You're very rarely, they're going to, consent decrees are generally operated when a Democrat's in power. Trump didn't do any, Bush didn't do any, I don't believe, but Obama did a lot. Biden's trying to beat that record. And they destroy cities. They literally destroy cities, destroy communities. That's not me, it's the data. And so the fact that they reform agencies is hilarious. What it is a mechanism to defund and abolish, the way they said. They found out, politicians found out that by saying defund and abolish is not politically savvy. So it's a side door to destroy police departments. So, because think about it, if you have to destroy something before you raise up what you want, which is what we're seeing across this country. And so you can look at the cities they've been in. You're never going to go on a vacation, New Orleans, Seattle, Chicago, Portland, Cleveland. I could go on and on. I mean, every city, once it's the vast majority of the most violent cities in America are ran by the DOJ consent decrees. And so here's how they operate. This should tell you a lot. They're going to come into a city and they're going to go, we're going to launch a DOJ investigation. And the chief could just say, good luck. You can go to court and sue and we'll give you records and stuff. But I don't, because to me, a chief that advocates for this, and by the way, most chiefs do, oddly enough, it's the weakest leadership move ever. Right. I don't need the DOJ to reform my department. I don't need an outside entity to make my department better. I'm the leader. I do that. But what these chiefs understand is certain chiefs is that's politically savvy for them to do that, because a lot of these consent decree monitors are former chiefs, right? They're on consent decree teams. They make millions of dollars, folks. And once they get into your city, by the way, the only reason consent decrees exist is the city leadership agrees to it. That's the only way the 10th Amendment can be violated. Right. The city leadership says, yes, please come in and help us. And so once they get in, they never leave. And the main reason is because it's not designed to leave. Nothing they do helps anything. And when the monitor is making $2, $3, $4 million a year to write 4 reports, who, by the way, doesn't even live in the city, right? Mainly lawyers from Washington, D.C., are they ever going to be the ones, if they love their wife and love their beach house, to say, yeah, we're done here? No, they're going to keep taking that money. So that's why you see consent decrees are lasting 10, 20, 25 years. It costs on average $250 million a year for every 10 years. I believe Seattle is 240 million into it. They're 11 years into it. And nobody wants to look at this, but it's so destructive. And I'll give you a quick example. Phoenix City Council was one of the first major cities to say, by the way, if you say no to the DOJ, they are forced to go to federal court and sue the city. They can't. They may sue, but they'll never go to trial because there's never any evidence. You have to remember, the 94 crime bill gave the DOJ this power because if it's a pattern and practice, well, it doesn't define what a pattern and practice is. So in the case of Phoenix, they came out with that report today. They would list one example. Right. By the way, they looked at Phoenix for 10 years. They've been to 40 million plus 911 calls in that time period. Probably been hundreds of millions of citizen contacts. They'll list one example and say pattern and practice. They were in Louisville. That report was so faulty. Even the activists read the report because, by the way, here's how the DOJ does it. They come into town. They talk to, that's what they did in Phoenix. They talk to the city. They say, hey, we investigated. It's bad. Sign this consent decree. And the city council, you got to give them credit, said this. Well, we're not going to sign this until you show us the investigation. The DOJ goes, well, we don't do that. Now, why wouldn't they want to do that? Because the investigation's faulty. Correct. In fact, even in Phoenix today, they released the summary. They didn't release the investigation. Okay. And so the only way the investigation gets released is if it goes to federal court as evidence. That's why the DOJ will never go to a jury trial, because it will, all the house of cards will fall. Yes. People will know what this is. And so my advice is, number one, don't ever let them in. Right. Good luck. The 10th Amendment's there. Take us to court if you want, right? Constitution's to the Constitution. And if they do demand a consent decree, go take us to court. If you think there's evidence there, defend it in court. Because right now, they haven't had to do that. There's been 2 departments, I believe, in the last 30 years that said, take us to court. And the DOJ just went back to Washington, D.C. They know they can't do that. And the reason Phoenix, they came out and just blasted Phoenix today, is because they're mad because Phoenix wouldn't agree to a consent decree. And they're hoping that they're going to intimidate them into just signing off on it. And if you're Phoenix, if they love their community, they love safety, they're going to go, hey, if you think this is true, go to court. Yeah. Well, and the DOJ may file the lawsuit, but they will never go through the court process where all the information is given up, because then people will see behind the scenes. Let me give you a quick example. In Louisville, the community read the summary, and the summary in Louisville literally said, all these officers are violating civil rights, criminal laws. They're doing this, they're doing that, doing this. And the community goes, how come you're not arresting them? And the DOJ goes, nah, we're not going to do that. Well, there's no evidence to do that. And the police department looked at some of the examples that were, some were just flat out lies. Other ones, they said, wait a minute, you use this as an example. We fired that officer. Right. What are you talking about? Yeah. This is not some pattern and practice. You use one example, we fired the officer. The problem is they'd already signed off on it. Yeah. So once you sign on the dotted line without seeing the investigation, it's over. And so Phoenix is an interesting place because it's a swing state. It's sort of a 50-50 politically city. And the council was probably pretty evenly split on that. Instead of just one mayor like Louisville that could sign it, it took the whole city council, and they at least had the brains to go, okay, we talked to New Orleans. They're screaming to get you out of here. You won't leave. We talked to Seattle, they're screaming to get you to leave. They won't leave. Albuquerque's in dire straits. You've been there 10 years. So we'd like to see the investigation first before we sign it. And the DOJ goes, no, which should have told you everything you need to know.
Exactly.
And folks, if there's any sense of right and wrong, the Congress would get rid of this law. Yeah. This law is unconstitutional. That's why they have to get agreement for cities to do it. Mm-hmm. But, there's been Republican presidents and Republican Congresses. They're not getting rid of it. They ought to have congressional hearings because the money flying around is pretty destructive. The guy that won the Minneapolis monitor position is going to get paid millions. Mm-hmm. He has an LLC out of a house. He's never done it before. I mean, there's like this. It's just like this hodgepodge of people that want to destroy law enforcement. They're all kind of in on it. That's and, right. I would recommend everybody follow Bob Scales on LinkedIn because he really is one of the few people that goes into detail. And man, it will just, it's so crazy. You won't believe it. And Phoenix has a great website up, and I've never seen it done before. And it's so good they did it. And I hope it stays up forever because it's called savephx.com. They have taken all of this information over the last 30 years and compiled it in this website.
Good for them.
Awesome.
And you see it front and center, the destruction this stuff does. I'll give you one quicker example. When the DOJ got upset that the Phoenix Council wouldn't just sign off on their destruction, they ran, I don't know if they did this, but it was pretty apparent when all of a sudden you started seeing interviews from Albuquerque chief about how great the consent decree's been. Albuquerque's been in this 10 years.
Right.
And the DOJ said, yeah, we have solved Albuquerque PD. Now, anybody who's familiar with Albuquerque knows that's not true. Yeah. We solved Albuquerque. Look how much better it is. So I just did a quick Google search, and the DOJ came to Albuquerque a little over 10 years ago because they had 18 officer-involved shootings. Now, just stop right there. What does that have to do with anything? Yeah. What's the facts on those shootings?
Look how big that city is.
And I know from a source in Albuquerque that none of those shootings were out of line or a problem. They just used the number, right? 10 years later, last year, they broke the record on officer-involved shootings, and their violent crime is up 80%. And the DOJ is saying that's success. So when you talk to people inside these departments, they will just, it blows your mind what the DOJ does to them. It destroys departments. There's not one department they've gone to where the crime hasn't spiked, morale hasn't plummeted, and recruiting is gone. Right. Every consent decree city is down at least 25% of officers. The problem in Phoenix, if they pass it, Phoenix is down 25% right now. And when you look at the history of consent decrees, they lose between 15 and 25% of their agency within the first few years of consent decree.
Right.
So is Phoenix going to go from 25 to 50% down? Their union did a survey, and about 20% of the guys says, yeah, I'm out. Day it drops, I'm out.
Yeah.
And that's if the consent decree happens. So I think that was enough for the city council to go, we better slow this down a little bit.
Well, I think a lot of these councils, and being a former councilman, they get into this because they go in blind. They don't understand the rules, right? And you mentioned $250 million over 10 years. The police department budget in the village where I was at is 75% of the city budget is police, right? So we're talking about how much money are you going to be paying over and above your operating costs of your police department to pay these knuckleheads, right, to come in and tell you what you're supposed to be doing. I think the absolute best decision ever is to leave them out of the door. If you want your crime in your local municipality, your agency, at a minimum, let the cops go do their job. And that's the problem we're having today, I feel.
DOJ is a monster, Mark. Let me tell you how they have to play ball. They don't go into a city unless the cards are right. I'll give you an example in Phoenix. Phoenix named an interim chief that was the major over the Baltimore consent decree. See what I'm saying? They then hired the lawyer to help them navigate the DOJ investigation. Yeah. That used to be a lawyer for the Department of Justice.
Shocker.
So the cards were in play here. And so when the chief goes to the city council, or the lawyer says, hey, we should probably do this, blah, blah, blah. The city council is just going to go, okay. I mean, that's who I did. Now, I don't know the details of that, but I know this. There was enough. I don't know anything about the chief or anything. All I'm saying is, no one find that odd, right? That before he was the major over the consent decree in Baltimore, he was a chief in Louisville or a commander in Louisville with consent decree. So they all sort of run these same circles. So the DOJ is not going to really land in a city where they don't have some pieces in place to sort of prop them up and make people believe that they're there to help. But all you have to do is read. That's why that website's so important, because you can look at that website, and even the mainstream media is now sort of going, what's going on here? You've seen some things pop up out there going, well, really? This is because truthfully, the DOJ is doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Their idea of reform is not our idea of reform. Our idea of reform is a better department and a safer community. That's not what their idea is, because they will say Albuquerque's success, even though violent crime's up 80%. And that's spooky to me that our own leaders are letting that happen. So you're right. To sum this up, the way you deal with them is you don't let them in the hen house, man. They're going to destroy all the chickens. And, but most chiefs, political chiefs especially, are very nervous to do that. Even in Phoenix today, after what they said about Phoenix was literally half a bunch of nonsense. I mean, just crazy stuff. They should kick him out immediately. They should say, get out of our city. Because Phoenix has spent $6 to $8 million to help the DOJ investigate themselves. So they're spending all this money to help them destroy them. And that's why leadership's important. We have leaders, unfortunately, that they want to be popular. They want to go with the flow. They want to do things and not rock the boat, instead of standing up and doing what's right. And that's why we need true leaders.
Yeah. Right. We kind of came across this organically. I think we did a interview with Michael Segru, and it's where we were talking about my story and Nick's story and Michael's story. It's kind of like, where is this all coming from? So it's kind of like they're all drinking from the same well, which is kind of like put our focus on ICP, or the Local Chiefs Association. It's like, guys, we realize that we kind of stay in our own echo chamber, but I think where we lost our vision is, and Travis, I think you and I had this talk about 6 months ago, was about chiefs that, if you're in a city and the crime rate goes up, it should be in the contract of that city, as if the crime rate goes up under your watch, you're done at the end of the year, bro. We're immediately going to go out and start looking for another chief. I think it's ridiculous the amount of salaries that we're paying some of these guys not to do their job. And that's what drives me nuts. So if we're in this association, right, and now it just seems like the big show game, right? We should be doing the consent decrees. What's consent? I'm not consenting to having you come in. I would rather take that $1 million a year and put it back into my communities. And how do we get our crime down? Is you start getting back out there. Nick, look at the work you did in Alexandria with your unit, your community outreach unit. I've seen through COVID, a lot of agencies quit doing the simple things like Explorer programs and Citizens on Proactive Patrol. We lost that link to our community, so now there's even a bigger divide. Now suddenly you got the government coming in. They're wanting to say, "Well, we need to come in and manage your department for you." No, what you need to do, city councils, citizens, is you pay a lot of money to have your cops go out and fight crime. Let them go do their jobs. Because I can tell you, when I was the happiest as a patrol officer is when I knew my citizens was like, yeah, go get them motherfuckers. Hey, that's what you're paying me to do, bro. But you treat everybody with dignity and respect as much as you can. But we got a job to do. Our job is to fight crime. It's not to sit there and play cutesy time with some person who doesn't even live in my city. Because you get out and you talk to your people every day, right? And they're going to tell you, not my fucking neighborhood ain't going to. I want you to go arrest that dude. We want our community safe. So I think that's where we kind of lost. We've had mission drift. We're trying to please everybody so much. Why don't you start pleasing the guy that's paying his tax dollars in this city, right, to protect my shit while I'm sleeping at night?
But I think what Travis said in the beginning rings true, which is that the public is finally getting to the point where they're tired of this shit.
Yes.
They're tired of seeing buildings being defaced and monuments being defaced, and you can't walk down the street without getting punched in the face in New York City. And unfortunately, it took a couple of famous people to walk down the streets in New York City to get punched in the face, where people are like, maybe this is fucking getting bad. So, which is
bad enough?
Well,
and it's a battle, because I don't know if you've been keeping up with this, but the leaders at the top, including police chiefs, and even President Biden just 2 days ago said violent crime has been reduced the lowest in 50 years. And then he goes on to say, by the way, over 40% of the police departments aren't reporting crime to the FBI. They're actually keeping the crime data back. And so they know that if people knew the truth, because listen, folks, crime is not about politics. Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, no matter. People want to be safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where a certain political party has gotten it wrong. Because they are going to lose votes, because at the end of the day, that's a very important feature for no matter how you vote, you want to be safe. And if a certain political party is not enabling that safety, that's going to hurt them. And so it's la land out there. And what we should be doing as leaders is fighting that. Now, listen, I'm a realist. I understand. I'm never going to be a speaker on ICP stage. I'm never going to be one of these guys that, where the yellow brick pricks are. I'm never going to be able to speak on all these stages, right? I'm never going to be able to do that. Because I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to make a change. I'm trying to leave an impact in this profession. That's not popular to some of these folks in power. And we just need more people to get rid of what I'm trying to accomplish and try to help the greater good. And that includes chiefs and ranks at all level.
Yes.
Listen, comfort is king, right? It's very easy just to go with the flow, sign the little pledges, say yes, nod your head, and who wants to get to the end of their career, end of their life, and know that you had an opportunity to radically change people's lives? That's the power of leadership. Yes. And the stuff we're talking about only changes lives for the worst.
Right.
And we have too many people playing that game, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you this, we're going to have to definitely do another episode, open invitation ever, whenever you want to come, man.
Yes.
This has been an absolute pleasure. It's something Mark and I have been saying every episode for a year. We're like, we got to have Travis on. And then finally somebody messaged you, this guy. And I want to thank you for coming on. I want you to thank you for coming on even after I coined the phrase yellow brick prick, which I heard is your favorite saying. I heard you with Jordan from Spinning Our Gears, and I was in the car driving somewhere for work, and I heard you, and I was fucking rolling, man, just rolling.
Yeah, I don't always give you credit because I have a yellow brick. I feel like I can say
it. I know you do. Listen, don't be fooled. I wish I had one up here, but you are the embodiment of what FBI NA should be.
Yeah.
So and Marcus had chiefs and commanders reach out and be like, I don't really like when you guys call it yellow brick prick. You're not understanding that what I'm addressing or where I came from is you are not part of that group. Okay. I'm sure in your old agency, your brick was not on a mahogany stand with 3 spotlights on.
I don't even know where it is. I see the box.
But that's what I'm saying is like, so I always knew when I went into a new commander's office at my old department, the more they had their brick displayed in pomp and circumstance, I knew how much more of a dick.
Don't forget the blue one, right? They just added that one in for fun, right? The blue one.
It's blue. And I mean, there's just been so many of them. But the thing is like, the FBI NA was established for a certain reason. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have to address that in another episode because I feel like that needs to be addressed with somebody that has one because you've been through it. And I think where it's lost its luster is there's a lot of shit going on where we need wartime leaders. I've said this a million times on multiple episodes. There's peacetime leaders and there's wartime leaders. The peacetime is over. So we need these wartime leaders to step up and like yourself to step up like you did and say, hey, listen, I'm part of this. And I'm telling you, I'm surrounded by people that don't have the proper mission focus. So I can go on and on and on, and we will in the next episode. Trust me, I swear. But more importantly is I wanted to thank you. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Like you completely changed my life at a time, like I said in the beginning, that quite honestly wasn't going good. I was circling the drain. Like, and that book really, really did change my life. It changed my perspective. I love listening to you because you and I, we have the same message when we go on different shows. I wrote a million things down here where I'm like, that's exactly how I feel. So thank you. Thank you for coming on. Anything that you want to tell the RCR folks before we head out?
Well, Nick and Mark, I appreciate both of you guys. There's such few real things online today that can really help us, and you guys are doing a phenomenal job here. So if you're listening, man, stay encouraged. We have the masses. We just need the right people in the right positions to stand up and do the right thing. And I need you to keep powering through, because if you leave the profession, you're not, we need you to stay. We need people inside the profession that believe in courage, that believe in leadership, and anything that I can do for you to help you with that, please let me know.
I appreciate it. Mark, any parting words? I don't think that you can suck up to Travis as much as I did, but go ahead. Good luck.
Only thing I can say is if you haven't purchased it on Amazon yet, get The Courageous Police Leader.
Thank you.
That book came out in 2019, right when I was running feet first through the shredder at my agency. I remember distinctly, I couldn't put it down. I mean, the day I got it, I buy this book. Travis, I've sent you your book and said, please sign this and send it back. I give it away as part of kind of my, I don't know, sub leadership training. It's a must read. I know it's still doing very well on Amazon as far as sales is concerned. It's a great book. Reach out. We follow Dr. Yates all the time, and we bring it up in both my shows. Your work. It's an honor and a pleasure to call you my friend, and it's an absolute honor and pleasure to be working with you today. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for all the audience for staying tuned through all my rants here.
Oh, they will.
Magic, man.
Yeah. All right, folks, take it easy, and thanks for tuning in again.
May your days and nights find you strong and safe. May you take your place as your family's face, as you do the shit that we won't do, as you embrace the risk you must go through. May you grow in strength and heal and find your heart, your soul, and your mind. You look at your life and grin. You have a home, the shield within.